Hi, this is Dawn at the James Kennedy Public Library. This is News Literacy Week, and this video, I'm going to talk to you about evaluating the news that you read and listen to. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it true? Is it false? Is it somewhere in between? And that's the hard part. We are inundated with news in this 24-hour news cycle. We get it through all kinds of mediums, through the newspaper, through the radio, through the internet, through our social media, through websites specific to causes that we like. And it can be hard to know if what we're hearing is the whole story or part of the story. Is the news skewed? Is it not? So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. So I'm going to start by sharing some slides with you. All right, so evaluating news. Is it good, bad, or totally fake? We hear this term fake news a lot, have for many years. It's not a new term, but basically fake news is false or misleading information presented as news. And it often has the aim of damaging the reputation of a person or an entity, or it's being used to make money through advertising revenue. Other terms for fake news, which you may have heard somewhere along the line, are mudslinging, slander, yellow journalism, propaganda, or satire. And fake news is not new. Dating back, one of the earliest known incidents of fake news is in 1475. In Trent, Italy, a story circulates about Jews murdering a 2.5-year-old Christian child. And the story resulted in all the Jews in the city being arrested and 15 are burned at the stake. And in reality, the child was alive and well, and the murder had never happened. In 1938, we have the famous War of the Worlds radio broadcast by Orson Welles, which many of you are probably familiar with or have heard of. And in this radio broadcast, they run fake news bulletins declaring the Earth is being invaded by Martians. The reality is Martians did not invade. And while we know now that this was basically a show that Orson Welles was doing, at the time that it was airing, people thought it was actually happening. A little closer to home, a little more recent, in 2017, President Trump is photographed looking at the solar eclipse on the balcony of the White House without protective glasses. I remember seeing this pasted around on various places, criticizing the president for not following the advice of wearing sunglasses and obviously not looking at a solar eclipse. However, it was a joke. The president knows that he's being photographed. He's got the press corps there and he's joking around with them. And he's looking at the sky. But yet places were posting this as if it had really happened. So there are 4 categories of fake news. The first is that it is flat out fake, untrue, false, or it's designed to be misleading. The first example here is this is the website of ABC News. Or is it? ABC News, one of our biggest news broadcasters in the country. And this was taken off of what appears to be their homepage. But it kind of raises some red flags. Like, why would the leading photo on ABC News be a bird sitting on it? Looks like an icy stem. And if you kind of dig deeper, you could see that the web address is actually abcnews.com.co, and .com.co is considered unreliable in the US and is not valid. Websites do not have this extension. So for whatever reason, this company or person or whoever created this site wanted you to think that this is the ABC News website. It is in fact not. Another category of fake news are websites that circulate misleading information. This information contains some truth, but not all the facts, and is definitely has a skewed viewpoint. And here's an example, a recent example. This is from Rebel News web source. And across the front page of their website is that Germany wants to ban the messaging app Telegram, which is a popular communication tool for anti-lockdown activists. And if you read the whole thing on the website, Rebel News says, the German government intends to take action against the social messaging app Telegram because Germans opposed to the country's harsh restrictions of movement and social activity over the pandemic are using the platform to facilitate resistance against the lockdowns. And it's a whole article on how, in order to basically stop the resistance and stop the protesting, because they are actually protesting and coordinating it over using this app, that the German government is just going to ban the app altogether. So I went digging and started looking at various other sites talking about this app and all these other news sources. And I looked at about 6 or so, and they basically all say that yes, the site is being used to organize demonstrations against the government's pandemic policies. So Germany is reviewing the use of this app, but they're doing so because many of the demonstrations have turned violent, and that authorities are investigating death threats made on the app against the state premier of Germany. So you can see there's a little more to the story. Rebel News didn't talk anything about the violence or the death threats, just that they wanted to just shut down the use of it because people were protesting things that they didn't like the government doing. So the third category of fake news is satire or comedy sites, which have the potential to be shared as actual news or literal news, and it's not. They're meant to be funny or sarcastic or something like that. The Onion is probably the most popular. And here is just recently off of the homepage of the Onion. It says Congress is preparing for another January 6th by enrolling in group karate class. That is not true. That is just the Onion trying to be funny. So the last category of fake news is called clickbait. Now, and this is content on the internet whose whole purpose is to attract your attention and get you to click on it, and then it takes you somewhere else. If you are a big social media user, and particularly if you are a Facebook user, you are familiar with clickbait. So here would be Facebook page. This was pulled from my Facebook page. This is quite a few years ago, when, if you are an NCIS fan, when Abby, the character Abby on NCIS, left the show, and everybody was in a big uproar. And so here I am logging onto Facebook one day, and here comes this down the side. This is tragedy after losing Abby for NCIS. But if you look underneath, the website is hughbeauty.net. And it tells you to click on the link to read about Abby's final moments. And so I clicked on the link, and it takes you to a beauty site. So it's nothing to do with it. The whole point is just to drive traffic there. So why do we believe fake news? The news seems plausible. We assume that the source is credible. We're on information overload. We can't sort through everything that is out there that we see and hear. Or the news is something that stirs up a strong emotion in us, either for or against. But they say the number one reason that we believe fake news is that we live in what's called a filter bubble. And that means that we, excuse me, that we look for information that already reinforces what we think and believe, and that we surround ourselves with people who think like us and kind of echo our thoughts and feelings about certain issues. And so we don't really go outside of that. So there are 6 ways to spot fake news. So when you're looking at something and you're wondering, is this real or not? Here's 6 things to take into account. The first is consider the source. Who's writing it? If you're on a website, almost every website along the very bottom of the page, there's like an about option or a mission, or sometimes there's a tab that will say about or mission. Go in there and see what they have to say about themselves. This will give you a lot of information about who the source is. Be leery of any site that says they have the whole truth or they're telling you what's really going on, because I would bet that nobody has the whole truth. I had put down 2 examples here, Rebel News, which we had used for the Telegram example earlier. When I went and read their about page, they very clearly stated that they are politically conservative, they are outspoken, and they and that's their worldview. Just like if you go to Mother Earth News, if you read their about page, they're very upfront that they are, for organic and, they're environmentally friendly and they want to save the planet and sort of everything that goes along with that. So then, that if something comes up about fracking or climate control, Mother Earth News has positioned themselves as being on the side of the environment. So then it wouldn't be a surprise that they are anti-fracking or whatnot. So another way to spot fake news is to check other sources. So a real news event is going to be mentioned on all of the mainstream news outlets and more than one. So you look at something, so then go see, is ABC, NBC, CBS, NPR, BBC, is everybody else reporting it? If they are, then something's happening. And if it's not, why not? If it's really news, all of the big broadcasters are going to be battling to get the coverage. Another thing is to spot fake news is to read beyond the headlines. It is so easy, and I say this for myself too, to just read the headlines. You're busy, so you just do a quick peek at the headlines. But often the headlines sensationalize the topic, and the headlines never tell the whole story. They have 1, maybe 2 sentences to explain everything. So you really need to read the whole article. Also, something to be aware of is that you should make sure that the headline and the pictures that go with the story and the story all match. If you are reading a headline and a story about the Queen, but they're showing pictures of birds, then that's a little bit of a red flag, because a legitimate news source wants to make sure that everything is correct and tied together. Another way to spot fake news is to check supporting sources. So this would be, look at the byline, who's writing it, Google that name, do a search on the name of the author or the journalist writing the piece, see what else they have written. If you are online and there are links provided, then click on the links. The links should be live, they should not be broken, and they should go to where they say they go to. If they do not work or they do not go to where they say they go to, then that is a sign that the news source isn't necessarily on the up and up. The 5th way to spot fake news is to fact check. So use a reputable fact checking website. And I'm going to touch on that at the end. And then last is to check your biases. your biases, the biases of the news outlet that you're using. And because both come into play. I mean, we all have biases, some big, some little, and while the news is supposed to be unbiased, it's not. We know that it's not. I mean, we know that the Washington Post has a tendency to run liberal and lean left. We know that Fox News is conservative and leans right, and that is reflective in how they report the news. So just know that it's not wrong that you want to get your news from Fox News or your news from the Washington Post, but just understand where the bias is coming from. Also understand your own personal bias if that affects what news sources you want to use. So one of the best ways to verify news is to fact check. So there are 4 really well-known fact-checking websites: Snopes, Politifact, factcheck.org, and the Washington Post Fact Checker. So Snopes has been around from 1994, and they handle urban legends, news, and politics. So this is a way for you to go in. You can you can search on the urban legend or the piece of news that you are interested in, and they will do their best to explain if it's true or false or somewhere in between. If you go to Politifact, they're just all news and politics. And it's the same thing. They will let you know where things kind of lay. And they use the truthometer. And you can see on the screen here, sort of down the middle. So the truthometer runs from basically totally false to totally true. And they rated the news articles based on the meter. And then if you read the piece written with it, it'll explain why they have rated something the way it is. And they will also send you to other sources. Factcheck.org. This comes out of the University of Pennsylvania, and they, in addition to politics and news, do science and healthcare. So that's helpful. They're a little bit broader. So how can you help combat fake news? Because that's really the question. The first thing I would say is fact check. Use a reliable fact checking website. Try to use sources for getting your news that are the least biased. And understand what the bias is from the sources that you prefer. And I would recommend that you balance that. If you, I'll keep using the Washington Post and Fox News. If you prefer a more conservative news like Fox, that's great, but try reading the same story as presented by the Washington Post, which is going to be a more liberal leaning. And this way you're going to get both viewpoints, and hopefully we'll round out because neither one of those sources is 100% correct. So this way you get just a bit bigger, broader, maybe more nuanced picture of the news. If you don't know if it's true or not, don't share it on social media. Many news stories are designed for you to have an emotional reaction to, and they want you to see it, or they want you to see that your friends have shared it. And of course you trust your sister or your best friend, so you just assume that it's true. But don't, unless you know that it's true, don't. And so before you share things, research it and make sure that it is true. Now, I am recommending this video to you. I am not going to show it. It's about 6.5 minutes long. If you go out to the TED Talks website, the name of the video is How Fake News Does Real Harm. And this was a great video from journalist Stephanie Busari about the fake news that was being spread about the abduction of the Girls in Africa by Haram, I can't think of the name, Boko Haram, and how that affected what was being done. So if you have time to go watch it, I would recommend that you do. So there you are. I hope you learned something about evaluating news. If you have questions, you are certainly welcome to contact me at the library, and I'm happy to answer them for you. And until then, keep reading the news and seeing what's going on. Thanks.